guys remember the story of Abraham and Sarah had a handmaiden, and she had really dealt harshly with Hagar. So it says in verse 7, now the angel of the Lord, so Hagar runs away, right? She's like, I'm out of here. I'm not putting up with this anymore. Done. I'm gone. So it says in verse 7, now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And I can't spend time on this because we only have a little bit of time, and I know it's Mother's Day, but Shur, the word means wall. So here's a mom running up against the wall. Ever been there before, a mom? Run up against the wall? Yeah, we've been there before. And the angel said to her, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? And this is a really important point. He didn't just say, hey, you maid woman. He said, Hagar, Sarah's maid. Pastor Fred Garini preaches this all the time. He'll say he doesn't put in there Paul the apostle, but it's the apostle, not the apostle Paul, but Paul the apostle. The man always comes before the label. And in this one, the woman came before the label. He identified her, Hagar, this is who you are. And then he said, I know your position, I know your condition, you're Sarah's maid, I get it. But he doesn't let us live by our labels. As moms, how many of you know if we could put labels on every hat, we'd be changing hats all day long for the rest of our lives, right? But God doesn't identify us just by these labels that we wear. He says to us, LaToya, Beth, Belinda, Michelle, I can't go through the whole room or we'll be here all day. But he identifies us by our name, and then we're mom. Lisa, the mother. I'm not the mother Lisa. Or the Mona Lisa. I don't know. Anyway. But he's identifying her for who she is. Where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for the multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. And it goes through all this about her son Ishmael. Anyway, then it comes to verse 13, and she says there, she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees. So God sees her, and God speaks to her, and in that place she says, you are the God who sees. She gets to name him, you are the God who sees. For she said, have I also here seen him who sees me? That's my prayer for you ladies, that you could walk away today saying, have I also here seen him who sees me? That you would be able to walk away saying that. Therefore, the well that she had been at was called Be'er Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees. So that's kind of the gist of it, the God who sees you. On Mother's Day, we need to know God sees us, because you know sometimes you get lost. Do you know, Caitlin, I bet you can relate to this a lot. This is Canaan's mom, Riker's mom. You go to, your kids go to preschool and they'll be like, I don't know who you are, but I know you're Canaan's mom, you're Riker's mom, you're Amelia's mom. We become named after our kids. Don't anybody, mom, ever been there where nobody knew your name, but they knew your kid's name? Yeah. But Jesus sees us. It says in the Word that Jesus said, I do whatever I see my Father doing, right? So if his Father went out to the wilderness for this woman and saw her there, so much that she could say, he's the God who sees me, then don't you know Jesus sees us as well? So I know last week Heather did Jesus Gets Your Story and Be Intentional. Well, the Lord put in my heart, as I was working on this a couple of weeks ago, to give you 8 stories, and if I can do all 8, I will. Brief stories about how Jesus saw women in the Bible. Now, guys, we listen to stories about the men all the time, and we apply them to our lives, don't we? Ladies, do you apply the stories about the apostles, the disciples? Men, you can apply these stories too. God sees you as well. So this is my Mother's Day message, but it's not like the men are eliminated. In Jesus Christ, there's no male or female, so just receive it for yourself as well. So my first story is about a daughter. And in each story, I'm going to tell you who Jesus sees and then what he does in response to what he sees. So you can listen for that. So the first one is a daughter. In Matthew 9, 18 through 26, it says, behold, a ruler came and worshiped Jesus, saying, my daughter has just died. But come and lay your hand on her and she'll live. So what did Jesus do? Well, she's already dead. No, he arose and he followed this man. So he gets on the way and he's going to go. So he saw that he was needed. He got up and he went to see the daughter. But we have to interrupt this story with woman number 2, the woman with an issue. Somebody's phone keeps going off. Is that ding, ding, ding? See a hand raised. Anyway, I thought the pizza was being delivered or something. So we have a woman with an issue. Now we know the scriptures about the woman with an issue of blood, but I just want to say, sometimes women, we have issues, right? Anybody else ever have an issue? Or deal with a woman? Oh, no women ever have issues, okay? I'm not saying it's a bad issue. Maybe it's not your issue. Maybe it's an issue you're dealing with somebody else. But there are women who have issues and things that they confront and that they deal with. And listen, so Jesus is on the way to the daughter, and I'll tell you, as moms, we often will not interrupt Jesus because we think, well, no, there's a girl that died and Jesus is on the way. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to touch Jesus quick and let him keep going. Because I'm just a mom. I don't want to interrupt. I don't need him as much as they do, as if Jesus doesn't have enough to go around. Ever been there, done that? So she's like, okay, I have an issue and I need Jesus to touch this physical issue in my body. And so she's like, let me run after him and just touch his garment and he can keep going. I don't want to slow Jesus down. That little girl needs him. How many of you know we put the kids ahead of ourselves? Way. Yeah, who said always? Yeah, okay, we do. When my kids were young, I didn't buy new clothes for years and years and years and years, unless something was worn out and I had to, or I was going to a wedding, or, all for the kids, all for the kids. I wore myself out a little bit this week. He's filming it though, so I'm not gonna talk about that. Not gonna talk about that. But kids take a lot of attention and energy, and we want the best for them, is that right? So in Matthew 9, verses 20 through 23, it says, suddenly, now Jesus is on the way to see the daughter who died. Suddenly a woman who had an issue of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment, for she said to herself, if I may only touch his garment. Come on, ladies, sometimes we're like, I don't have time for an hour prayer session. I just need to touch Jesus real quick. Anybody else ever been there? Like, just a touch real quick so I can do it. For she said to herself, if I only touch his garment, I shall be made well. But Jesus turned around and he saw her.
He stopped.
Come on. He turned around and he saw her. It's not like it's all for your kids. He's got as much, because in his eyes, I'm a child of God. Your kids are a child of God. I'm a child of God. We're all children of God. He's got enough for all of us. So he turned around, he saw her, and he said something. I love that. Jesus doesn't just go, well, too bad. He saw her and he said something. He said to her, be of good cheer, or good, whichever translation you read, good comfort, good courage, good confidence. Daughter. He called her daughter. We forget that we're daughters when we get up there a little bit. When we have daughters of our own. Sometimes we forget that we're daughters. But he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. I love that. So Jesus saw the woman with her issue. Let's just throw every issue in the pile. Maybe you have an issue with unforgiveness. Jesus will see you. Just reach out and touch him. And he will see that and he will help you to get through it. Okay? So he spoke confidence and courage into her, and he healed her too. So back to the daughter, who was number one. We have the daughter, the woman with the issue, and her story interrupts the other story. So let's go back to the daughter. Matthew 9:23, when Jesus came into the ruler's house, he saw the flute players and the noisy crowd wailing. He said to them, make room, for the girl is not dead but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went out into all that land. So Jesus saw her, and he cleared the distractions to this daughter's destiny. You see that? So I know that this was a physical death, but come on, ladies, sometimes when we become moms, every now and then, our dreams die. I'm just saying, have you ever known somebody who was a great artist and they just quit? Great musician, they quit because their mom, they don't have time for it anymore. You can only do so much. And Jesus meets us in that place, and he's going to clear the distractions to our destiny because we're his daughter too. And that's what he did for this daughter. Okay, woman number 3, mother-in-law. Anybody have a mother-in-law? You are a mother-in-law, or you've dealt with a mother-in-law? Come on. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's bad, and we have mother-in-law stories, and I'm going to tell one today. It's not dishonoring to Wade's mom, but it is funny. I wouldn't tell it when she was living. But we had a great relationship. But when Jessica was about 3 years old, she was babysitting my kids only for a few hours, guys, few hours. This girl had long, beautiful hair. We parted on the side, beautiful hair. I come back in the back door of her house, and she sits just up on the counter in front of me, and she has trimmed her bangs till they're up to here. And this is my mother-in-law, and I'm like, if I open my mouth, I won't be a Christian anymore. I was just I'm sure it looked like my head would explode. And she's like smiling at me like I think she knew what she did wrong, but I don't know what possessed her to trim her bangs, but we have mother-in-law things, and that took me a little while to get over the fact that she took the liberty to cut my child's bangs up, and they were crooked, they weren't even straight. We had to take her to somebody and have them pull bangs from way back here and pull over it to cover them. It was so bad. But we still had a good relationship. It didn't destroy it, but you know what? Sometimes you are the mother-in-law, and you just want to love your son-in-law, your daughter-in-law, and you're not quite sure how to do it, and you maneuver through it. So I'm just saying, these labels fit all of us somewhere. We try to do our best, and sometimes we do good, and sometimes we step on somebody's toes. But in Matthew 8, Jesus cares about the mother-in-law. Verses 14 and 15, it says, when Jesus came to Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law laying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand. And the fever left her. Just a touch, ladies, just a touch. And she got up and she began to wait on him. So he saw the mother-in-law, he touched her, and he healed her. So ladies, if you are a mother-in-law, if you have a mother-in-law, if you have good, bad, other, Jesus is going to come in and touch that situation. So believe for it, okay?
Amen.
So we have the daughter, the woman with the issue of blood, the mother-in-law, and now we have a woman who suffered loss. She was a widow and a mother who lost her child. Luke 7, verses 11 through 16. It says, Jesus went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and a large crowd. And when he came near the gate of the city, behold, a dead man was carried out, the only son of his mother, lost number one, and she was a widow, lost number two. And a large crowd from the city was with her, and when the Lord saw her, see, this is the message today is God sees you. Every one of these was about Jesus seeing somebody. What he sees, he responds to and does something about. He moves in on it. He's a creative God. He's going to move in on your circumstance and situation. It says he had compassion and he said to her, he saw her and he said something to her. Do not weep. Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, young man, I say to you, arise. So he who was dead sat up and began to speak, and he presented him to his mother. So he saw this widow, this mother who had experienced loss, this woman who had experienced loss. He had compassion on her, told her not to weep, and then did the miraculous and raised her son. Mm-hmm. But my favorite part was when it says he presented her child to her. How many of you are believing for children to step into their full destiny with the Lord and what he has for them? The fullness. When it says he presented this child to them, I'm like, yes, that's what we're going for. Some of us are believing for sons or daughters to be saved. Yeah. And to me, that is bringing them back to life. That is Jesus touching them and coming and saying, I'm presenting your child back to you. Maybe you have a child who you know is called to do this, or they're called to do something other than what they're doing. Jesus is going to come and present that. You've got young kids, let's believe Jesus is presenting your child to you in their full destiny. I believe he's going to move in those situations. In verse 16, following that, said, then the fear came on them all, and they glorified God, saying, a great prophet has risen up among us all, and God has visited his people. Ladies, that is what we're going for. We're going for an encounter with God in our motherhood, in our daughterhood, in our sisterhood, that people look and see God has visited them, and that they give glory to God, and that it changes the culture around us, the environment around us, the atmosphere around us, because we've encountered the Lord. That's what we're going for. Okay, the fifth woman. I'm cruising right on through them. This woman, let's read it. Luke 13:10. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years and was bent over and could in no way raise herself. The bent woman. Okay, so she was physically bent over. She was physically bent. But you know what? Some of us are bent on the inside. I'm not telling you there's something wrong with you, but you know what I'm talking about. You've battled depression, you've battled grief, you've battled, maybe some of you have shame, pain, abuse, whatever it is. There's this bent place, and maybe you're just worn out. Anybody ever been worn out? If not now, in the past. Ever been worn out, and nothing you could do could bring you of course, Beth, you have a newborn baby.
You asked.
I did ask, and you're right. And I remember those days. I'm glad that it's a vague memory of not getting sleep, but still. But sometimes you feel like you're bent and you just can't raise yourself. Well, guess what? You don't have to raise yourself. He's going to come And he's going to raise you up out of that bent place. It says when Jesus saw her, I told you, he sees you. If he saw these women, he sees you.
Yeah.
And he sees what Heather talked about, the longing of our hearts. Like if we could know the story, know the longing. He sees the longing of your heart. He sees and knows what you need him to do. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him. Today, he's calling you to him. He's saying, give me whatever it is. Give me whatever it is you're struggling with, whatever it is you need. You give that to me, and I'm going to meet you in that place. He called her to him, and he said to her, woman, you are set free from your infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. So when he saw the bent woman, I love that he called her to him. He set her free. He laid hands on her, and she was healed. We already prayed for healing today when Pretlow came up. If you need healing, how many of you, this is the truth, we've had so many people battling that C word, and then you get a headache, and you're like, my headache is nothing. I don't want to talk about my headache when people are battling cancer, as if Jesus can't touch all of it. Anybody ever been there? Like, I'm not going to tell anybody to pray for this because, it's not a big deal compared to that. No, he's got enough for all of it. Okay, 3 more women. The next one is the poor widow. She's not just a widow, but she's a poor widow. Luke 21, 1 and 2. As Jesus looked up, they were at the treasury. He watched all the rich people putting their gifts in the treasury. In verse 2, he saw a poor widow. So she's way over there. Maybe she's in the back of the room here. Jesus is over here watching, but he saw the poor widow. Put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly, I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All of these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Jesus sees how much you give, moms. Sometimes moms are running on empty. Not because, listen, I'm not going to say they're running on empty because they just haven't had their time with the Lord. Sometimes you've had your time with the Lord, but the time required of your children or you've had special needs, grandchild, things that you deal with in your family require more than you have time to fill up on. And so you give out of, I don't want to say a poverty of your soul, but there is this place where you're like, I had 5 minutes to pray before this had to be handled. And you can judge all you want whether somebody's had enough prayer time or not. I don't think Jesus approaches it that way. He loves you, and he knows, and he sees how much you give. You know what? Sometimes you pour out and nobody sees it. Anybody ever, moms, you're here, have you ever feel like you've done so much for your family, so much for your kids, and all the grown kids in here, I'm sorry, we love you, but everybody seems clueless for what you've done? All the moms are so humble in here, they're like, oh, yeah. Because we do it, and we're going to do it whether it's noticed, acknowledged, or not. Some of us are words of affirmation people, and it would be really helpful if somebody would look at that mom and say, you did a great job, Mom. Other moms are just like, please pick up the broom and help me. That would be me. Just sweep the floor and I'll be happy, Pick up your stuff and I'll be happy. Some of us are that, but no matter what it is, Jesus sees how much you give. And this is what I love. This poor woman, this poor widow, gave out of her lack. She gave her last coins. And Jesus used that example. He made an example of her to us. Moms, you don't know it, but you're an example. You are an example to your kids, to your kids' friends, to other moms. Beth, don't you, you've got a new baby in your arms. It's helpful to have other moms who went before you, isn't it? Sometimes we give too much advice. Sometimes we think we know the way to do it, but most of the time you can pull something out of that that's useful to you. So he took this poor widow and he saw her and he made an example of her. What a blessing. Moms, you give so much and he sees you. Got 2 more ladies. We're almost done. We have the sister. Anybody in here a sister? And if you're not a sister in the natural, then you're a sister in the spirit if you're a female in here, right? In John 11, we know that this is where Lazarus had died. And it says, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet saying, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, he was greatly troubled. He was greatly, deeply moved in the spirit, and he wept. But listen to this. Jesus didn't say, woman, why are you so emotional? You know what else he didn't say? He didn't say, is it that, I don't know, is it that time of the month for you? It must be, you must be close to, Jesus. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. But Jesus didn't do that. He said, where'd you lay him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. And I don't think he wept because Lazarus has died. I think he wept because he saw how much it impacted the sisters. He cares about you, sisters. He cares and he has compassion. And he's not coming. I love our husbands. I love the men. But they want to fix things for us sometimes. And so that is, okay, you're emotional because, what did I do wrong? What did I do? You didn't do anything wrong. Check. Okay. Well, is it that? No, it's not that time. Check. Jesus didn't do it that way. He had compassion. And he went to work to make something happen. And that's what the men are trying to do too. I get it. And Jesus did. We know how this story ends, right? He was deeply moved. He saw it. He was deeply moved. And he raised Lazarus from the dead. We have one last woman, and she's a mother. She's not just any mother. She's the mother of Jesus, Mary. But in another sense, she is just any mother, because you know what? As far as Jesus is concerned, you are just as important. I really do believe that we are just as important. He is not limited in his ability to give. He didn't have just enough for his mother, and then it was all expended. He's God. He has enough for all of you mothers. So listen to this. Jesus is at the cross, right? And when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple who he loved standing nearby, he said to her, woman, here is your son. And to the disciple, here is your mother. And from that time on, the disciple took her into his home. So when Jesus saw his mother, he provided family for her, right? He made sure she wouldn't be alone. He was like, you're not going to be alone. You're going to have family. Ladies, you're not alone. This is family. Take advantage of it. And I don't mean negative advantage. You know I don't mean that. Take advantage of it, though. When we get together as the ladies and we go out to dinner, man, sometimes we get spiritual and sometimes we just give each other a shoulder to lean on or an arm to lean on, and we can share. Sometimes we laugh together and sometimes we cry together, but we are family. Would you agree? Yes. We are family and we come together. So I'm going to wrap up because I know a lot of you need to go. But today, ladies, you might be a daughter. Maybe you're a daughter. Maybe you're a mother or a woman who has an issue, a physical issue, an emotional issue, just a life issue. Maybe you're a mother-in-law who's trying to figure out how to do it right. Or maybe you have a mother-in-law you're trying to figure out how to do it right with. A widow, a mother who's experienced loss, a bent woman. Like, what makes you feel like you can't stand up straight some days, you can't get up? Whatever that is, Jesus wants to meet you in it. A poor widow, a sister, or just a mother. Jesus sees you, and he's coming to you. And I believe he's coming to you this morning. I think he's releasing confidence and courage, and he's healing you. He's clearing the distractions to raise you up to your destiny.
Thank you, God.
Any mom ever deal with distractions? Like when the kids are all home every hour? Like he said, we were with our 4 grandkids, and I could barely think straight because somebody has I loved it. I wouldn't miss one moment of it. I don't know what he was talking about. He was down in bed for 3 days with the flu, maybe 4, so I'm not sure what he experienced. But I was out there with them all during that time. I guess you had half of it. Anyway, I wouldn't miss it for a minute, but they do all talk at once. I mean, we work on it like somebody's talking, but still, there's something going on all the time. So anyway, he's going to clear the distractions just so you can think straight. You can zone them out when you need to, okay? How many moms, you learn to zone out what's not important, but if somebody gets hurt, you're like, oh, okay, we got it. But sometimes you have to zone out the rest of it. Yeah, he's nodding his head. He knows his mom zones things out. Yep. He's ready to touch you, to heal you, to have compassion. Jesus is releasing freedom so that you can rise to your purpose. Peter's mother-in-law, man, she loved serving, or she wouldn't have done it. He touched her, raised her up, and she started waiting on him because she got right back into her purpose. And he wants to set you free today so that you can function in your purpose. And I love the part that he would present our children to us. I'm just going to believe for all of that for each of us. And that our lives would be touched, that he might be glorified. And Hagar said, what was it? She said, have I also here seen him who sees me? Have I also here? So ladies, we're going to take just a couple of minutes. I have a song called Lean Back. I just love this song. And I'm going to invite the women forward. And after the women come forward, the men are welcome to join us, because this is for all of us. That we might see here him who sees us. That you might have an encounter with him. Maybe you have 5 minutes and you've got to go. Come have an encounter with him, that you might walk out saying, have I seen here him who sees me? He wants you to see him, to hear him, and if you don't see or hear him, just feel his presence around you. Sometimes that's enough. I've joked with you all, but it wasn't a joke. And when we had little kids, I used to go inside the laundry room. It was a small one too, and just close the door for 30 seconds. But Jesus, I need you right now. Okay, somebody's screaming. I'll be there in a second. Just a moment with Jesus can change everything. But God sees you. So if we can just go ahead and put that song on. I'm going to invite the ladies to come forward. The moms, all of you ladies. If you're a daughter or a sister, just come forward and let's just stand and lean back in his loving arms and believe for him to meet us in this place. And men, you're welcome to come up and stand behind them after that. And after that, you can just go to the communion table and take communion together. And I'm going to pray for you right now that God would bless you.